As I'm like, well, that's a weak character. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone is doing well. If you are new to the channel, thank you for stopping by, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and my other content on the channel as well. Haven't been uploading quite as regularly as I typically do, but sometimes it kind of just fluctuates like that. However, I still have been stopping by when I feel like there is something definitely interesting that I want to talk about. Over the past 24 to 48 hours at the time of making this video, Zack Snyder has been sharing some really cool things from Inverse.com superhero issue that he was a guest editor for, and he got to do this very cool thing. He got to interview Frank Miller. Clearly, they are, it's a goat to goat situation, and very cool read. It's a pretty long interview slash article. So if you have the time to read it, I highly recommend it. It's super, just really cool conversation. I desperately want a video of the interview after reading it. So I don't know, but it's very cool. The cover's cool. Zack got to guest edit the issue, as I mentioned. So he's been sharing lots of different posts from that. But of course, I'm not going to go through the whole interview and the whole article because it is pretty long. But there is a specific thing that I just want to highlight, particularly concerning Batman. Obviously, they have a history because Frank Miller wrote the graphic novel 300. Zack Snyder made the film. Zack Snyder did Batman vs. Superman, which is heavily influenced by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. So they have a lot of similarities in terms of how they view things and their perspectives on superhero characters and, these worlds. They talked about Daredevil and Elektra and a whole bunch of other things, including 300 and Sin City and lots of other things in the article. But concerning Batman, there is something that I just want to kind of highlight from the discussion between the two of them. Just for some context, they're sort of talking about Frank Miller's take on Batman and The Dark Knight Returns and how he's kind of this older, grittier Bruce, and, he's pretty much the complete opposite. Frank Miller said he wanted him to be pretty much the opposite of what people saw in the Adam West TV show, being able to take, push these characters more and what they can and can't do according to, people in the industry, fans, editors, things of that nature. So Zack said, well, it's cool because if you can create a scenario where Batman has to shoot a gun and someone says, well, Batman can't shoot a gun. And you're like, well, what should he do in this scenario then? And then someone says, well, don't put him in that scenario. Zack says, I'm like, well, that's a weak character. You can't have a character where we're modifying this scenario because he can't exist in it. That's not realistic. Now we're just creating scenarios that his morality can work inside of rather than the other way around. And so him and Frank Miller were very much on the same page about this if you read the interview, because, both of them were kind of saying, like, if someone tells me that this character can't do this, I immediately want to put them in a situation where they do that. And Frank Miller was kind of mentioning the same thing about giving him any excuse to use a gun, even if it's the grappling gun. It's this big thing about Batman not using guns. And I really appreciate Zack's comment here about that's a weak character if you can't put him in a scenario that he has no choice. Like, you have to be able to test. They were talking about testing these characters in, putting them in situations where they are tested. It's necessary for superhero characters in particular to be put in tough situations where they may do something wrong, or they may have to do something that kind of goes against what people expect them to do, because it's part of their character arc and building them to be a better character because of these certain situations, because of these scenarios. Like he says, that's not realistic. And of course, we know the famous, Zack quote, you're living in a fucking dream world if you think that Batman, especially with his, vigilantism, is not going to be in these scenarios taking down criminals. Characters need to be in scenarios where it's not just, there's always an easy way out, so to speak. I appreciate this point too, where Zack says, now we're just creating scenarios that his morality can work inside of rather than the other way around, which if you want to have the versions of superheroes that exist in a more grounded, realistic world, that's how it should be. Like Frank Miller also mentions in the interview, he's not just, you can't put him in a scenario where he's just cold-blooded, murdering someone, shooting them at point blank range or something like that. Like, that would be a little, that might be a little too much. But putting these characters in these situations where it's not just like Zack said, well, don't put them in that scenario. Then that's, what kind of character is that? If you can't put them in a difficult, challenging scenario that challenges the character, in order for characters to grow, has to be situations that allow that to happen. And a character doesn't grow if everything is just super easy and predictable and there's always an easy way out. Obviously, that's what Zack was trying to do in his movies with all of these characters, right? It makes for a more interesting, well-rounded character if they are allowed to be, if they're able to be in those situations, and what happens might kind of be a little shocking or surprising, but that's not a bad thing. If you have them running around just willy-nilly using their privilege, whatever kind of, powers or whatever kind of, in Batman's situation, whatever kind of advantages that he has, obviously you can't just go around killing people. That's not the point. The point is they should be able to be in situations and scenarios where they are tested and it doesn't necessarily upset people that they're not always in these perfect situations, that they are challenged. And it feels like, the creator, whether it's the artist, the film director, whoever it is, when the character's portrayed this way, it, in my opinion, makes it feel like that creator is taking the character more seriously and not sugarcoating everything. Appreciated, like I said, their whole discussion. If you do have the time to read it, I recommend it. Zack's been sharing a lot of stuff on Twitter from the article, from the issue that he guest edited, and I reposted as well. Speaking of, Zack's characters, a little bit off topic, but it's on my mind. There have been some more rumors regarding Henry Cavill and his possible return to the MCU. It maybe as a more of a long-term character, or I don't know if it's Wolverine if coming back. I don't know, but there are rumors that he could potentially be returning to the MCU. And it's also been confirmed that he's going to star in the live-action Voltron movie as well from Amazon and MGM Studios. So let me know if you guys have any thoughts. Let me know if you were able to read the interview, the discussion between Frank Miller and Zack, and your thoughts on anything else that stood out to you. What do you think about those Henry Cavill rumors and anything else that might be going on in this, world that is on your mind or that you find interesting lately? Don't forget to check out anything you might have missed previously and the short section. Thank you guys so much for all the support. See you next time.